All right, folks, unless I tell you otherwise, you're good to go. Have a great meeting.
Thanks, Brandy. Welcome to you all again this wonderful Wednesday morning, is it? Yeah, it's a Wednesday morning. Okay. I don't have any sort of opening remarks particularly, so we might as well get right to the agenda. And Judy's, I think, put this one forward last time that we thought we might discuss a little bit, and that is the municipal elections coming up, and what we could do to engage the students in that to some degree. So Judy, do you want to talk about that, or maybe I could also ask Brian, you know, have you ever done anything like that? Is there any education that goes on at the college at the moment about municipal elections? Maybe provincial elections too. I mean, they're also on the table.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. There have been some initiatives in the past where we've done some debates on campus. It might be a little more interesting with the still dealing with COVID and most things being virtual, but we are starting to have some events on campus, so there may be an opportunity to do something around that, or even a virtual one, and have any of the candidates then available virtually for a virtual debate, and have students asking questions, getting the information. So that has happened in the past, both for municipal, well, actually all three: municipal, federal, and provincial level.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The other piece of it is, I wonder how many students are aware of whether they can vote, how they vote, you know, how do they go about it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the bigger question, particularly, I mean, with our international students. I'm assuming they're not eligible to vote, but I'm not sure what the guidelines around that are. But for our domestic students, certainly there's always some question around, can they vote because they're from somewhere else, but if they're currently living in the area, what do they need to do? So there's probably a good need for some education around that. And I'll admit, I'm not really sure what all the steps are in order for them to be able to vote. But in previous elections, when we've been provincial and federal, there have been enumerators that have come by, you know, gone to residents to get people enrolled in it, etc.
All right. Okay. Any discussion on this item? Judy, did you have any thoughts on that? Because you were the one that brought it up the other day. Brandy, is Judy available? Can she hear us? Do you know?
She is on the call, but I'm thinking maybe she might have stepped away from her computer. Okay. Unless she's having issues.
All right. Okay, well, let's hope that she can connect up. If she's not connecting, she's not responding anyway, so. Right, not quite sure where to go from here, but I'm just wondering, Brian, if you could, or the college could, lay some sort of connection between yourselves and the city clerk's department. The city clerk's department is definitely in the municipal part of it, right in the middle of it, and I don't know how to connect you up with the province. Jake, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. In regards to discussions and eligibility, I think we would probably need to figure out what the eligibility would be for voters, right? If they're, like Brian had said, in regards to international students and domestic students, if they're not eligible, if they're just, you know, if their permanent residency is, say, in Guelph or Toronto or Sudbury or wherever that might be. And I think once we have more information about that, that would probably better help us decide on what amount of what amount of resources we would be willing to put into that. Just because I think if we're looking at creating like an infographic or something, or information package to have, available for students, what is the cost benefit to that, for the time to, make that material and put it out, if only 5% of the college students are going to see that, and then the discussion would have to be around, I think, does this committee see value in that? So I think probably have to find out more information before we, at least personally, before actually moving forward with that.
Okay, Brian?
Yeah, I'll have Shauna, who's our manager of student life, connect with the city clerk's office and get a connection with the province. The summer, I'm not sure for the provincial elections how much turnout there would be, because we'll be primarily still remote delivery, but certainly for the municipal elections, we'll be back to more of a normal, most programs on campus with in-person classes. So we'll have a lot more students around that we'll be able to work with them on it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the municipal election isn't until the end of October, so you've got a fair bit of time there. I think, and don't hold me to this because I don't know this for sure, but I think you have to be a Canadian citizen, and just whether landed immigrant or whatever counts as part of that. I don't know. But historically, students have a very low turnout in terms of elections, and if you can get them used to voting when they're young, then they'll do it more later on too. So I think it's a really would be a great initiative if we could get something going there. Hello, Judy. I don't know whether you were listening to. You were? Okay, great. All right. So if Brian, if you wouldn't mind getting those connections kind of put together, and I agree with Jake too, that if it's a lot remote, and if there aren't very many students eligible, then it may not be worth the effort. But I think that there certainly is. I think it's probably useful to do it anyway. But okay, any further discussion on that item? Oh, Judy.
Yes, my apologies. Always, I seem to have tech issues on the fourth Wednesday of the month, but I am here, and I appreciate both Jake and Brian commenting on like what's gone on and kind of the reality of the college resources, and it's not aptitude, but it's what and why would we put something into it. And I actually might consider this to be in the city purview to do to work at outreach. So outreaching to the community, I'm thinking focused on the municipal election. So in the same way that, the city reaches out and promotes to any candidate, and perhaps it could be, improved, especially as we're looking at that diversity piece in like what the outreach is, but to like actively include Georgian college engagement without the mindset of whether or not they can vote. Because yes, as you mentioned, Claire, international students, you have to be a Canadian citizen to vote. Permanent residents cannot vote, and newcomers cannot vote. So much promotions are often done to people who vote, and not necessarily those who will in the future, and that we would like to, be proactive and engage in our community. And I think I'd mentioned it before, but just the idea of inclusion when you come to a new city, regardless of whether you are a domestic Canadian or you are coming from somewhere outside of Canada or even Ontario, and to see, a campaign happening and to not have a clue what it's about is an immediate disconnect from the city. And so I was thinking like putting some effort into even just a passive campaign that could be easily accessed, but that is directly targeted at Georgian students, I think could be, really helpful to begin that process of engagement and inclusion. And they're going to be opening the doors for people coming by. And, instead of just saying, oh, I can't, I don't know anything, or I can't, why not engage with candidates? And it might help to provide responses and encourage them to ask questions as well. So it is early to be talking about the election, but like candidates start registering in the summer, which isn't that far away now, thankfully. So those are my thoughts.
Okay.
Thanks for the elaboration there, Judy. I appreciate that. I do think the elections are important for folks to know about. And I'm not familiar with past elections, municipal elections, and I'm curious how often they have open debates and so forth, and if there's an option for that to continue, would hosting those at the college where students might be able to access it easier, would that be an option, depending on what pandemic kind of looks like in terms of reopening? I know that the college definitely can has space for community members and students and staff and folks from the community anywhere to kind of come in, right? So if we're looking at making it more accessible for students, perhaps looking at it from a community perspective to have like a debate or some of those events hosted at the college.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Judy.
No, I was just going to respond to say, it's my understanding from past community engagement that debates are organized by a community group in a specified location. So they are not, nobody would organize it for the Georgian community. That would be the body, hosting a debate. And the great thing about that is also being able to tailor questions specifically to that demographic and community group. So, it'd be fabulous for Georgian to do that, but to drum up even attendance or support, having a backgrounder and, a what is and a how to, I think would be really useful. And so I guess to add on to that, I would put forward that can there be an advisement to this city or Access Barrie to work on that, or to consider specific targeted college engagement around information in the municipal election?
Right.
I was just going to say, we have the theater, which the city leases from us, and I know in the past you have used it for some debates. So that's certainly an option. I mean, it could be a debate that happens open to any of the community. So that's definitely an option. And we are moving back to having events on campus. So it should be an option by the fall.
Sorry, Brian, I missed what you had said. Where? What location?
Oh, the Georgian Theater.
Yeah, I recall a debate there for the federal election a number of elections ago. Georgian College is great for the community. I don't know whether it's that accessible, easy for the general public to get in and that kind of thing, but that could be figured out, I'm sure. I think that if there's a connection between the college and the clerk's office to start with, I think that will, then you can kind of get educated on what's involved and that kind of thing too. I may be displaying my age, but I remember when I was in elementary school, and I think in even high school, there was a course on civics. It was part of how you graduated, was you had to know about how politics worked, government worked, and I wonder how much we're doing that these days, and maybe that's part of the problem. And I must say, I mean, I've got some experience knocking on doors, and I must say that sometimes knocking on doors in the student areas around the college were some of the most fun days that I've had campaigning, you know, because you get some great conversations going with some great people. I don't know that very much of campaigning actually goes on the campus itself. And I haven't really turned my mind to that, but I don't know how much that actually happens. But that would be kind of cool too, you know, to get students to actually, you know, talk to a candidate or two. So anyway, I think we're probably on the right path. We can get the college and the city to get together and start talking about it, and then we can probably figure out something for the fall.
Claire, which group is that? Would that be, or department? Would that be access?
Well,
like who works with the elections?
Wendy Cook's office, the clerk's office. They're the election central for the city. So they would, and then yeah, communications and that kind of thing goes through Access Barrie, but most of it would be the clerk's office, I would think. Provincially, I don't have much of a sense of that, but and actually, you know, the students probably should be paying attention to the provincial election, because that's where there's a lot of money coming from. So anyway, all right. Any more discussion on that item, Rob?
I guess I'm just curious, Claire, do you think that we need to provide a motion to go through the process to have the clerk's office work with Access Barrie and the college specifically in this instance? It's probably going to be too late to have that passed through all the levels in front of the provincial election, but we can certainly still influence how the municipal election is handled from a process perspective.
Sure. Yeah, but we could, Brandy, if you could maybe take a note, we can polish it up later, but you know, that Access Barrie and the clerk's office be requested to work with Georgian College to encourage greater engagement of the student population in the municipal election, something like that. Is that what you're thinking? All right.
I would cover it, yep.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Raises the profile a little bit too. Thanks for that.
Are you doing that as a motion, or are you just asking me to submit that a request into Wendy?
I'm kind of inclined to have it as a motion, because then it goes formally through the process and gets seen by people.
Okay, so I will get that written up if the committee's agreeing to that.
Yeah, I think we are. Any discussion on that motion particularly? Okay, so that's carried. All right. Okay, the next item was the new term of Town and Gown Committee. I'm not entirely sure how that got on the agenda, but anyway, let's have a chat about it. And I think this is kind of looking at, all right, what about next term? Should we, I don't know, put anything in place for the committee next term? Any discussion on that? Comments, thoughts? Judy?
I will speak to it because I did suggest it for the agenda of this meeting, and but like it's one of multiple times that I have suggested a discussion about the purpose and scope of this committee's evolution and into its next iteration. I think the terms, from what I understand, and the purpose and the description, the membership was determined many years ago, of relevance long before there was a significant international student population. And I mean, before, I would say, well, whatever, 3.5 years ago, when I was applying for this committee, I looked into the past you know, meeting notes and whatnot, and there wasn't much there. You know, there was a lot of, you know, parking or security was big, police involvement, fire. I found that really curious because, and especially when I first joined, I saw all those folks that from the different city departments that we even see now, invited to the meetings. And yet when I read the description and what the positions were, there were only 5. And that was, or was there 4? Please correct me, but there was 2 community members, which is right now is Jake and I, and 2 Barrie East End Household Association members, BHA, which is Rob and was, I suppose, Ryan when he joined, or there were 2 positions. And then the other, I think, was the counselor. And yet so much of our discussion and perspective and action items have come from the folks who joined the committee. And it's very general to say, we're going to improve and work on and build relations. And I just think there's so much that's happened over the last 2 years, I would say, especially, that could use that momentum as part of the recruitment rather than, going back to a very basic description, which doesn't necessarily cover the scope that we've unofficially been shaping. So I wanted to bring that up for discussion. Like, I did some looking into, the makeup of town and gowns in different areas, and internationally, provincially. They often focus on big, large schools, but there's no reason why we couldn't be creative and personalized in the city of Barrie to reflect where we want to go with college and city relations. That really would be a great improvement on where it was in past years. So those were my thoughts. If anyone wanted to jump in, I saw Brian doing a little nodding. Plus, I think, Brian, you have been a member in the past. Oh, sorry. And I'd said the members, that was the ones that council selected, but there were also 2 Georgian college positions, which when we first started was yourself as is it the Dean of Students? And Roman, the head of security, which also says a lot about like what the previous priorities were. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that.
Sure. Brian, comment?
Yeah, sure. I think some great points you've made, Judy. I've been on Town and Gown since its inception. Can't remember how many years ago that was now, but it really was in many ways, a reactionary committee in that sense, in that it was developed in order to deal with some issues that were going on. But we've certainly moved far from that, and I think have built strong relation between the city and the college. And we certainly seem to be delving more in this committee, as you've mentioned, into broader issues and how to work closer together, and where are the strengths of both the city and different organizations within the city and ourselves. And so it probably is a good opportunity to take a look at it and say, we still need to be able to deal with issues as they arise and be proactive on those. But what are the other pieces we can work together with and really help the city, and the city help us, and really as a community be one? And I think of some of the initiatives Claire's done, for example, with some of the invasive species involving our environmental students. So I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of synergy, that it can also be very positive and sort of growth oriented, as opposed to just reaction to issues.
Yeah. Rob?
I was just basically going to echo that. I mean, I think that historically the committee was created as a response mechanism to ongoing pressures and issues that were taking place that were less focused on the international or in the student population. And so I think if there's any opportunity to reframe the committee as being more proactive, more focused on policy and systemic cooperation between the representative organizations, I see that as being beneficial moving forward for sure.
Yeah, Jake.
I feel like I wouldn't be me without a good comment about EDI, you know. I know I've brought this up before, and I really want to push forward that we really, when it comes time to promote, I guess you would call it the election or application period, um, we really need to be making sure that we're reaching out proactively to marginalized groups or communities within the Black, Latino, Indigenous communities, right? We really need that representation. We need folks to be seen and heard on these committees in order to enact change. And we also, if we're looking at the representation, we should also be looking at the terms of reference and the application or the information that we're providing, right? Are we putting it through a gender decoding tool to make sure that it is we're using gender neutral language? Are we making sure that we are not using words that are too, I'd say, masculine or feminine to scare off certain people? What are the skills that we're asking for, right? If we're looking for English as second language learners, are we talking about how communication skills have to be excellent, where somebody who isn't an ESL person is going to look at that and think, well, maybe my communication skills aren't as excellent as they need to be for this committee. So are we unintentionally pushing away those communities who would be excellent additions to apply and you know, go through that process?
Rob?
Just a quick follow-up. I did last night Monday night at General Committee, the two motions that we put forward a few months ago through the committee to change the process for committee recruitment were passed unanimously by General Committee. So they will be going forward to Council on Monday, and I would assume that they will be passed unanimously as well. So we have certainly influenced the process going into the next term of Council.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Rob. It did go through Council or through General Committee, and it will go through Council, I'm sure. And I guess the question that I would have is, yes, we can put this in a motion. But you know, the proof is really in the pudding, right? When the applications actually come in after the next election, will we really have a slate of candidates that, you know, represent the diversity that we're really looking for? Let's hope we do. But I think there's going to be a learning curve here. And now let me say too that you know, there's a long history of town and gowns. I don't know when the one in Barrie started, but town and gowns all over the world have existed for many, many years, and they were really dealing with the relationship between the university usually and the city that surrounded it. And I think in Barrie, that was much more of a later thing. And I was a member before I was elected. And I can tell you that, you know, it was a complaint session for the most part. I think we've made some real good strides in these last few years to try to bring this to much more of a collaborative, working together kind of approach. I think we still have a long ways to go, but I'm pretty pleased with where we are today in sort of relation to where we were a number of years ago. I'm sort of wrestling with how to actually operationalize this change, and I'm just thinking that perhaps the best way to do this effectively is for one of us to craft a new terms of reference for the committee. Take our existing one that we have and craft a new one, and then send it around, and let's have a discussion on it next meeting. Because I think that, you know, it's easy enough for us to have this general discussion, but you know, somebody needs to take the lead and put pen to paper, and then we will be able to have something concrete to talk about. Any volunteers? Silence. All right.
I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I'd certainly I'd be involved. I mean, it's something that I feel very strongly about. So I would love to work with maybe a committee member, put heads together about like what best to present to the whole group. If there are any takers on that.
I'll assist, but I'd like Jake to help too.
I was looking at you two, Jake and Rob.
Okay. Can I ask you to do this then? Can I ask the three of you to, between now and the next meeting, put your heads together, come up with a draft, or a list of important points or something that gives us something concrete to talk about at our next meeting. Can I ask the three of you to do that? Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. And if you need anything or want to kick something around in between the meetings, you know how to get a hold of me. So I'd be happy to chat with you about it too. And I'm assuming that all of you have the terms of reference for this committee as it's structured now. Okay. So you can use that as a base anyway.
Sorry, Claire.
Yeah.
Would we be able to get an a version that's editable, or that we can edit? So something that's in like a not PDF version, like a Word or some format, so that we can actually go in and make comments. Is that possible?
We can just make one. We can just copy that PDF, do it like a Google Doc, and then we can work with that.
Perfect.
Oh, see, I was going to throw up my hands and say, I don't know, but you've got it. All right. Okay. That's great. Any other items on that? All right. The Georgian College updates. Anything happening at Georgian College, Brian?
Sure. Just a couple of quick updates. So we are continuing for the summer as a remote first delivery method. You will see more staff on campus though. So staff are all to be back now for the summer semester. We do have some flex work arrangements, but you'll see a lot more activity around campus. And then for the fall, we're going back to, I guess, what will be the new normal. So most programs will be in person, but there will be what we call GC Flex, where some programs, students will have the option to take their class. They may come on campus one day for their class, but it works better for them to then do it virtually the next time. So they'll be back and forth. So we'll see a little bit of changes with that, but we are expecting to be back to a more normal operation. We've started conference operations back up. We have maintained our masking mandate. So that will continue on campus, but we've removed the restrictions around entry onto campus now. We still ask people, obviously, to ensure that they're feeling well, and that if they aren't, ask themselves those typical screening questions and stay home then. And other than that, I guess the only other news, which is fairly big for us, is that Mary Lynn West Moynes, our president, is retiring in June, and Kevin Weaver, who is our vice president academic, was the successful candidate to be our new president, which is quite exciting. So we're looking forward to that. And that's really it for me for an update.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right. Jeff Sharp, any suggestion, anything from you?
Thanks, Claire. We still continue to have our speed boards on Grove and Cook Street. Grove Street, the average speed is 34 kilometers an hour, with the 85th around 44. And Cook Street, which is southbound between Grove and Steele, we're seeing similar to what we had last month, 28 kilometer an hour average speed and an 85th percentile speed of 46 kilometers an hour. Other than that, we're continuing to work towards finalizing our temporary speed cushion locations, and we'll be reaching back out, Claire, to your email in the coming days with Michelle on some of the things you had brought up. We're looking to have those installed end of May, beginning of June. And that's all I have for traffic.
All right, thank you. Michael, anything from you?
Yeah, just a quick update from a zoning end. Since the last meeting, there's been 110 zoning complaints, and that's citywide. About 40% of those have been in the northeast end of the city. I would say about half of those have been for interior issues like second suites and boarding lodging rooming houses. And the other half are for exterior issues. It was getting a little bit warmer. It's snowing right now, but when it was a bit warmer, especially during the springtime, we see a bit of people starting their spring projects, creating larger driveways, installing fences or accessory buildings on their lots, and we've been getting some more complaints for that.
There's never any shortage of complaints for you, Michael. You'll never be able to retire.
Hopefully one day I will, but we'll see.
All right. Any questions or comments for Mike? All right. Jason.
No shortage of complaints from me either, but I will be retiring in 7 years and 2 months. But with the season change, obviously the snow melting, our property standards complaints have started to come in. The state of yards mostly. Dog feces is a big one now that the snow is gone. And then just some other garbage and stuff like that around. So our complaints are starting to escalate. I would mention to anybody out there that if you are speaking to somebody or have a complaint, to have them forwarded directly to our office so that we can get all the information required to get a timely response to them. Sometimes we get emails sent through that don't have a lot of information, and then we're back and forth, and it just delays our response sometimes. So you can pass that along to the students, the other people in your committee, the other BHA members, that sort of thing. They can contact Enforcement Services directly. We have a phone number and an email that they can get a hold of us at, and that just speeds things up for us. We are also in the midst of our spring recruit. We have a bunch of summer students hired to help us out, a lot along the waterfront this year, but we also have new full-time officers coming on board that will be able to help with stuff like the yard maintenance and a bunch of our other complaints, more than just the parking issues. So it's animal control and licensing issues and the yard maintenance, etc.
Any questions or comments? Judy, you're on mute.
Yes, Jason, I do have a question. I've recently just with a friend while walking, starting to do, spring cleanup around the sides of the road. And we got to talking about like, who does that? And like, where does it fall under? You were saying that you have complaints about enforcement of like yard waste. How does, I'm not a homeowner, so I actually don't know the answer. I have a landlord who does all of that for me. So I don't think about it, but I am curious because I'm sure a lot of students live in areas too, where they're not responsible themselves for cleaning up after the snow melts.
Okay. Anything that's on the private property itself is considered a yard maintenance problem. So just unkept yards, grass that's not cut, garbage that's accumulating in the yard that hasn't been put out for collection, state of vehicles in the yard, that sort of thing, storing debris or used furniture, that kind of things on the yard, on the front porch. Those are all yard maintenance concerns, which come through this department. If it's to do with the city property, so boulevards, they put stuff out hoping somebody will take it. or garbage that's been put out for collection but isn't taken because the contractor doesn't take it. Too much garbage, that sort of thing. That also comes through our department, but it falls under either the waste bylaw or the nuisance bylaw. And then we also deal with things like people throwing garbage in city dumpsters, city receptacles, leaving it in parks, leaving it on dead end streets, that sort of thing. We deal with all that as well.
And the city every year has a program called Spring Into Clean, and community groups and students and whatever are all encouraged to go out and pick something and pick an area and pick up the garbage that's been left over from the winter. You can get garbage bags and gloves from the city, those yellow garbage bags. I think they're sponsored by Tim Hortons even. And so you can gather up and leave that garbage bag, put it out with your own waste, or put it beside a city garbage bin, and it'll get picked up. So there's a lot of actually very interesting, a lot of community people that do that, and I certainly appreciate it for sure. Okay. One thing for me, Jason, when do you expect the proactive enforcement of property standards to start?
It has already started. We do have a couple of officers that have attended to different complaints, not a complaint of yard maintenance, but while they were there, they found some issues and have started to do that. The training has been completed, and there was just some access issues getting them into our complaint program that IT had been working on, but it's seems to be rectified. And with the change of season, they should be out there starting those proactive complaints now.
Okay. All right. Anything, Carrie, anything from you?
Well, I have as much or as little as you want.
That's true. No fires, no major accidents, so we're good, right?
Exactly. Like our other enforcement friends, our calls for service for concerns or complaints with landlords and tenants are increasing, as they normally do at this time of year when people are having to move, for the summer, or want to get out of their lease or whatever. Magically, their smoke and carbon monoxide alarms are non-existent, and so we get a lot of those calls to try and deal with, but we want to make sure that our people are safe, so we always go and ensure that the life safety requirements in those properties are up to snuff. Since January to the end of March, we've had 77 calls for service in the, I'm going to say Duckworth, Grove, Penetanguishene, Georgian Drive area. 84% of those were medical calls. We had 3 fires, 1 vehicle fire and 2 stovetop fires, so some distracted cooking education to occur in that zone. And the rest were miscellaneous or alarm calls with no action required.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else that we should talk about? All right. So we have a bit of homework to do between now and the next meeting. And thank you all for your hard work. And I really appreciate it. I think that we're all moving in the right direction here on this committee. And we've got more work to do, but we'll get there, I'm sure. All right. With nothing else, that adjourns us today. And I hope you have a great day. Great.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good day.
Thank you.
Bye.